I'm Sam.
And I'm Cindy.
And together,
We're the Memory Makers. And today we're going to introduce to you the newest member of our camping family. This is Tammy, the Tandem. And this adventure started about a year and a half ago. It was a Sunday afternoon, weather was gloomy, so we decided to go to the Ohio Valley Antique Mall, which is close to Cincinnati. And if you live in that area, I'd highly recommend it. It's a great antique mall and for us, takes a couple of hours to get through. That particular day, we rounded the corner and I saw a yellow tandem bicycle. How old would you say? 1960s, maybe?
somewhere in that area.
It was big and it was a hunker. So we kind of examined it, and Sam said, I think it's just too heavy. It's not going to meet our needs. And plus, it was a little on the pricey side. So we walked away from it, and a little bit later, I mentioned that, man, it'd be really nice to have a tandem because then we could ride it through the campgrounds instead of getting in the car if we needed to go to the camp store. And usually when we're at a campsite, we'll hike or do something during the day to burn some calories. And I thought this would give us another avenue to burn some calories. And especially if we were tired from hiking, didn't want to do that anymore in the evening, we could maybe take a bike ride. So little did I know that from that point on, Sam started looking for a tandem for us to get and didn't say anything about it. Of course, I had no idea. And then one evening, close to Christmas, he came home and said, hey, we're going to go to Indy tonight and maybe get something to eat. Kind of surprised me. We drove into a neighborhood and the guy came outside and he lifted up his garage door, and here was the tandem bicycle. So we didn't ride it right then. We just looked at it and brought it home, and it was nighttime by the time we got home. And of course we wanted to try it out. So we put on our jackets and we were going to ride it around the circle of our driveway, and we both hopped on. And that was a new experience. I'd never been on a tandem before, and I didn't realize that when you're in the back, you have no control over steering. You are 100% at the mercy of the driver. Now, Sam probably already knew that, but I didn't. And there was no way he was going to let me be in charge. So he jumped on the front and I jumped on the back, and we started out. And we were wobbly at first, and I'll admit it was a little scary. And we hadn't gone maybe 15 feet, and we heard a bam. And I said, what was that? And we had blown an inner tube before we even got out of the driveway. So that was the end of our first maiden voyage on the tandem. And the next night, he came home with an inner tube, and he did what he needed to do to fix all that. And so we started out down the driveway, and our driveway is steep. I did not want to ride down the driveway, especially because I didn't have any steering. I felt like, I was wobbling back and forth. But we made it, and we didn't tip or anything like that. But we came down the driveway, we made the turn, and down our driveway, not only is that a pretty steep hill, but when you come at the end of our driveway, you're also going down a hill. So by the time we got to the bottom of that hill, we were really cruising fast.
We had no idea how fast we were going at that point.
Yeah, it was kind of scary. I'm not going to lie. But then we, kind of crested the next hill, and honestly, that was hard because not knowing that it was going to be so hard to pedal. But we got to the flat part, and then it was really fun. And we came back and we started to go back up our hill, and we couldn't do it. We were too weak or lazy or I don't know what, but we walked it up the driveway, and we walked it up the driveway, and he tried to say I wasn't pedaling, but I really was the whole time. And we decided we got to change something. That I know us, and in a campground, if it's a little bit hilly, we would say, you know what, let's just drive to the store because it's not fun if it's really hard work. And so that's when Sam said, I think we can turn it into an electric bike.
So it's my turn now.
Your turn now.
Caught me off guard there. So like Cindy said, we picked up this up in Indianapolis and brought it home, and our first ride didn't go quite as planned, but it was interesting to say the least. It had hung in their garage for, I believe he said 6 or 8 years, and he had new tires and inner tubes put on it, but they had pinched the inner tube in the back, and it just blew out when we aired it up and went to ride around the driveway. Um, but that first ride, once we even got out on the flat ground, it was just extremely hard to pedal. With both of us pedaling, and I can tell when Cindy stops pedaling, even though she says I can't, because they're directly connected together. So one person stops, the other person knows it immediately. um, but it was just extremely hard to pedal. It is does have a derailleur in the back with 7 gears, but even at that, the gear ratios were so high that it was just really hard. So what we decided to do after talking about it some was to look into the e-bike option and see if we could convert it. My first go with that, the price was just crazy for what it was that we were going to use it for. They were wanting close to $2,000 for the kit, and they were wanting me to convert all the brakes to hydraulics, and I get that, but at the same time, we didn't want to put that much money into it. So we basically turned it into a product of Amazon. Everything that we've got on the bike right now, we got off Amazon. It still wasn't cheap by any means, but it was far less than the $2,000. And after doing it now, it's a ball to ride. We've actually got to use it quite a bit. We've ridden around our area here. We've taken it on a trip up to Columbus and unloaded it and put it back together and rode all over a bike trail in Columbus north of us. Stopped for a beverage on the way back because we were both kind of thirsty at that point. But it's been really fun. And the e-conversion kit allowed us to turn it into something we can actually use now, because before it was just so hard to ride and so hard to pedal that we wouldn't have used it. So just to give you a quick rundown of what we did with the e-conversion on it, like I said, everything came off of Amazon. I'll put links to all the parts that I used to convert this to an e-bike in the description below. But essentially, I bought a 26-inch Voilmart hub drive motor, and with it being a tandem, I went with a 1,000-watt motor because I figured we're going to need all the help we can get, because our driveway is 16-degree hill, and then the other hill outside that's probably even steeper. So with the 1,000-watt motor, we have to help pedal up the big hill, but that said, it's very easy to do now versus what it was. So it was pretty straightforward on the installation of the hub motor. You essentially removed your old wheel. I did have to do a little spreading on the frame because this hub motor was a little bit wider down here on the axle. So I'd spread that apart a little bit. I had to open up the slot here a little bit for this indexing washer, that tang right there, but that was pretty minor. They came already with the freewheel and the sprockets, so all I had to do was attach that. And it turned out that actually was a good thing, because the sprocket ratio that they sent with it was actually geared a little lower than the original, so it made it even easier to pedal overall, even without the electric motor kit. Now, the one drawback to it being a tandem, everything comes pre-wired, so it's basically a plug-and-play system into the control box. But with this being a tandem, it's so much longer, and the wire harness that came with it just wasn't quite long enough to reach up to the box that I put here to house the control and all the connections in. So the only real difficult part, for someone, if you aren't used to doing this type of work, is you had to D-pin the connector and extend the wiring harness to get enough wire up to be able to connect into everything. But that was pretty straightforward. Picked up a 1,000-watt, 13 amp hour battery pack. It locks on the tray here. Had to make a few mounts because this was originally designed to go on a down tube. So I put it here on the horizontal tube, worked out nicely. So far, we haven't crashed into anything with our feet while we've been pedaling. It has a built-in battery meter on it, so when it's charged, you press that button down and you'll get all 4 buttons. So the red's over here. If you get down to that point, you're about dead. It has a key lock so that you can physically lock. This is the cover for the charger that plugs into it, but on the other side over here, there's a key lock so that you can physically lock this to your bike so someone doesn't walk off with your battery pack. And then moving forward, all the connections and the control unit I housed inside of this plastic box, which is designed for e-bike conversion kits like this to store all that stuff. And like I said, everything was plug and play. The instructions, yeah, they were a little iffy. A couple of YouTube videos and kind of working your way through the instructions, you could figure out what went where. And the plugs, for the most part, would only go to one plug. So it wasn't like you could plug the wrong thing into the wrong plug. So that was pretty simple. I got the large box because I just needed the extra room for that size controller. Like I said, had to extend the wiring harness, and I don't have this fully buttoned down yet because the plan is to paint this bike to match Cindy's vintage camper, her 68 Shasta. So we're going to have a match set when we get done with this. So this is just kind of a rough tied in just so that we didn't get connected or get our feet in any of the wire connections while we were riding it. So from the control unit, everything comes up to the LCD screen up on the handlebars here. And I'll turn it on so you can see the screen. So it comes on to the start screen. So it shows our battery level right here. So we got a full charge. The odometer showing 31 miles. Obviously we're not moving, but the watts going to the battery or to the hub motor right now are 0. So as you're riding and you either go to increase speed or you come into a hill and put it under a load, it'll show the watts actually increasing, showing you're putting more power to the motor. Now, the PAS on the side here, I did not hook up on this bike. That is for a pedal assist system, and it was designed for a different style crank, and I was gonna have to do quite a bit of work on it to convert it to this bike. And what that system does is it automatically starts to blend in the electric motor power as you're pedaling yourself. And I really didn't want that because it added a lot of complexity to the system. You had to change the handlebar grips, levers for the brakes, which it did come with, and they had shutoff switches in them. And that was just more wires you had to run back, and it was just going to clutter things up. And then you had sensors on the crank itself, and then you had a wheel sensor so that the computer could determine, the bike is moving, how much power does the computer need to put to the bike in order to maintain speed. And, that was just more complexity than what I wanted because our bike shifts on the right hand grip on this side. I couldn't use the twist throttle that came with it. So back on Amazon, and I picked up a thumb operated throttle that goes here on the left side. And that works out really well. I can still shift with my right hand, use my left thumb to just blend in the throttle of the electric motor as we need it. And we don't use it, just for riding on level ground. We're not that lazy. We can pedal the bike and maintain a nice 20-mile-an-hour pace without too much problem. But when you start to get to an incline, this thing gets really hard to pedal. And then I just slowly blend in with my left thumb, and you can hear the wheel starting to turn now. If you want to show that, Cindy, you know, so the more you squeeze that thumb lever, obviously the faster it's going to go. And if you hold it wide open with it in the air like that, it gets humming. But if you want to come back and show the display here, as you blend in your throttle, as it winds down here, it'll get back to 0 when the wheel stops. So there we go. So it resets to 0. So as you bring in your thumb throttle, you can see your speed of the rear wheel increase. So it's actually fairly accurate, or at least it should be on the rear wheel, because they know what the gear ratio is and the size ratios of the wheel and the tire. So the speedometer and the odometer should be fairly correct for the setup. Now, it didn't show any watts going to the motor because there was no load on it. So once we get riding, I'll see if I can get a picture of that. And as we go up a hill, you can see that blend in. And even though it's a 1,000-watt motor, it's shown about 1,100 watts going to the motor up a really steep grade. So, I mean, it really puts the power out, and you can definitely tell the difference to it when you're using it. I mean, the first time that I rode it, Cindy wasn't on the back, and I was just going around our circle and brought the thumb throttle in, and it actually moved my head back. It had so much torque to it. On over here by the thumb throttle, there's a mode switch, which you use to select through the menus on the display here, so that you can set it up the way that you want. And then the M is also the on and off for the whole system. Just press, it turns off, and now you're back to a clear screen here. So overall, it's a very simple system. I wouldn't be, you know, concerned that it's going to be too complex for you to install, because if you're used to working on a bicycle at all, this is pretty straightforward stuff. The electronic aspect of it, as far as me extending that wiring control, that's something that if you can't handle yourself, then you probably have a friend that can help you depin those connections and stretch it. Then you only have to do that if you're putting it on a tandem. And I looked around, I never found anybody that had an e-bike set up just for a tandem. So, I just made it work, and it worked out really well. Would you like to go for a ride?
I'd love to, but before we do that, I want to show them the basket.
Oh, the booze basket.
The booze basket. We sound like a bunch of lushes, but I mean, if we're gone for a little while, you might need to have a beverage on your way back. So we got this off of Amazon, and we think we've got a little cooler we can put in there. So not only can we take our beverage with us, we can have a cold beverage when we're ready.
I also got a tool bag for it, and it's by the same manufacturer as the hub drive motor. I'm gonna screw this up, but Voilmart, is that kind of what it is.
Or Voilmart. I don't know.
Where's the W at?
Well,
I don't see a W.
voila, it starts with the letter V.
Sure. Anyway, moving on. So I got this tool bag, and it fits what I need, the essential tools that I need to carry with us to take the front wheel off and on when we go to put it on the carrier. The only downside to it is, so their label is this direction. The hangers are this direction, so I can't do that. I got to cut these off and sew them up here on the top, and I'm gonna hang that here inside the basket so that we've got our tools with us. Uh, you know, Walmart is evidently upside down.
Apparently.
Let's come over to the truck and we'll show you the carrier that we picked up to move this, because you don't see a lot of tandems, being used in different places. And we now know why, because they're just ornery to move. So unless you want to drag a trailer behind you, which is what we did when we picked this up, um, getting the thing from, your home to your campground, yeah, it's a little bit of a challenge. So we'll go show you what we ran into and how we worked around it and how we're going to get this to our campsite next time. Our original intent was we were going to get a carrier, we didn't know what at that time, and use it on top of Cindy's RAV, because that's typically what we travel in, is that. But when we pull the camper, we use my truck. So we wound up finding a rack on Marketplace, drove a couple hours, pick one up, $100. They're pretty expensive if you had to buy one retail. So we were thrilled at that price. Come home, get the bike ready to go. And it took several evenings getting this thing all ready to go. And we had a trip to Beaver Island, Michigan planned. So we were, really rushing around trying to, the last thing to do was get the bike on the rack. So I thought, it'd be a 5 minute deal. Little did we know. So I get the rack out, mounted on top of Cindy's car, had to make some mounts so that it would mount to the aero bars, and got that all done. Go get the bike, and there was no physical way short of a crane to get that bike up on the rack on the factory bars that were on the RAV. And the reason is, so this is a Topper Racks tandem bike rack. It is designed and made for a tandem bicycle. So you can see it's stretched. It's got an extension down there for the tandem bike. It's very solid. I mean, I've got it mounted here on the truck, and you can rock the whole truck with it. Very nice rack. The way it's designed to work with a tandem is it has back here on this side, Cindy, the the front fork mount. So you remove the front wheel off your tandem, pull this axle shaft out, and loosen it up, and you essentially raise your tandem up and come up here with your forks and slide the forks into here, lock that down. This pin comes out, and you actually spin that around before you do it. So you would spin it around like this, set the forks on here, lock it down, and then pick the rear of your bicycle up and walk it around and set the rear wheel up there in that track. Sounded so easy. So we get out here the first morning, and the issue with Cindy's car was the way that her roof rack or factory rack is designed. The bars come up off the rack and extend so far in with the mount of the bar before you get to the actual bar that by the time I got this mounted to the rack, it was so far in the middle of the RAV, there was no way to reach it with the forks without crashing into the car. And we tried several different ways, and it just wasn't going to happen. So we moved it over to Bert. That's what was the name for my truck, and mounted it on Bert's rack. And we come up here and we got the fork hooked up first time, no problem. I picked the bike up, started walking around the corner of the truck, and the issue with a rack like this, it works very well, but you have to pivot this mount back with the bike and get it back in line, and then set your rear tire in the track. Well, that tandem now weighs somewhere between 90 and 100 pounds. And you're picking this thing up, about almost 6 feet in the air to get it up here. And I did that. I got it up in the air. But when I started to move the bike to line it up on this, the forks turned in the frame of the bike. And oh my gosh, I thought I was going to wipe out the side of the truck and drop the bike, because the whole thing just started to collapse. And Cindy's laughing because she was standing there watching it. So she come running over and grabbed the bike and helped me get it back upright and set it back down. And I was like, we got to figure something out here. So it was pretty simple, and we'll show you here. We'll actually set the camera up and let you watch us put this thing on the roof rack. We've gotten, I wouldn't say really good at it, but we've gotten better at it where we can do it now in just a couple minutes. But you have to secure the handlebars to the frame of the bike to keep everything in line. Because if it pivots any at all, everything starts to collapse down, and your 100-pound bike is just very awkward to hold at that point. We joked about someone, worried about someone stealing it off the top of the truck. If we take those straps off that we use to lock the handlebars down, we'll find them dead on the ground next to the truck because that 100-pound bike will collapse down and smash them between the truck and the bike. I mean, it's once you figure out the system and make it work, it's not that bad. Would someone, two people the size of Cindy, be able to do this? It would be a
No.
challenge. I'm
I'll just flat out say no.
so I'm 6'1" and I've got long arms, so I can reach up here. Um, we still have to use a little two-step ladder and a milk crate to aid in this process. But we've done it several times now, and we've taken it for rides, and it's fun. I mean, it's a lot of fun. It's worth the hassle. The whole idea is that we're taking this with our bushwhacker in October up to a campground in northern Michigan, which is a few miles north of the town, but it has a bike path from the campground to the town. So, we can buzz down to the town, have drinks and dinner at night, and, ride back up to the campground. And so that's the plan. So, you want to go for a ride first, or you want to put this on the rack first?
Let's go for a ride first.
Good idea. So here we are on the bike now, and we've never tried this before. Our first take didn't go so well. So let's see if we can just get it rolling, and then we'll kind of give you a quick overview of what it's like to ride it, and then we'll give you a point of view of what the display shows why we're riding. So you want to try this again?
Oh, yeah.
It's not as easy as it looks trying to film this and ride at the same time.
Okay, we need to get going.
Are you ready? Okay. Okay, now I got to shift gears with the other hand. So there we go. Hey, we can do this. All right. So what do you think?
Well, it's great.
Yeah.
It's a nice morning.
Well,
Pedaling too hard.
yeah, a little chilly.
No hills.
No hills, pretty flat here. So right now I have no electric motor running. It's just simply us pedaling. We're in fifth gear. It's showing us cruising along here about 15 miles an hour. Got a truck coming. They'll probably think we're crazy when they see this. So on a nice flat road like this, we just don't need the electric motor. But once you start up an incline on this tandem, you're really glad that you've got the electric motor. So, doing okay back here?
Yeah, you're doing great. I wish I'd put my hair in a ponytail, but
Me too. So I'm going to bring in just a little bit of electric motor at this point, and I mean you can't see it in the footage, but you can definitely feel it.
You can definitely tell it when it comes in.
And so right now I've got just a little bit of electric motor. It's showing 53 watts of input from the battery to the motor. So just hardly any at all, but it makes a huge difference, and it really picks up speed. Just makes the whole riding experience much more enjoyable. Here we are riding again, and now I can give you a better view of what you see on the display while you're riding. So I have 0 electric motor input, and you can see we're pedaling along in fourth gear, pretty flat ground, doing about 12 miles an hour. And we've got a little incline coming here on the road. It's not much, but you'll definitely feel it if you don't start downshifting on the tandem. So as we get to it, what I'll do is bring in just a little bit of thumb throttle, and oh boy, too much there. So you can see the watts down at the bottom shows about 400, 300 watts going to the motor. And then once we break over this rise, I'll just come off the electric throttle. We'll actually just coast all the way to the stop sign. And there you can see it's giving our odometer and our speed readout. Um, just very simple, very basic, works great. Um, just very pleased overall with the whole system. So I'm sure people are wondering right now, how fast will the bike go just off the electric motor? And on flat ground with both of us on board, not pedaling, just using the electric, we've got 34.8 miles per hour, pretty consistent. We've never cracked 35 on flat ground with just the electric motor, but that is more than fast enough for the bike. We don't have disc brakes, and I didn't want to do that upgrade on this bike because we just tried to keep it as simple as we could, obviously as cheap as we could. And the scrub brakes work fine as long as you're using the motor, correctly and not trying to overpower or overspeed the bike. Just using it like we do to help go up hills. it does a super job. And as far as range goes, I'm going to guess probably somewhere in the 50 to 60 mile range for how we ride the bike. Um, and maybe a little longer than that. We've never depleted the battery yet, um, but we've got some pretty big hills in our neighborhood, and we've gotten to the point where we were down to 2 bars on the battery, and it still was, it's a lithium battery, so it's going to output, full power to the very end, and it still did fine at 2 bars. So somewhere in the 50 to 60 mile range, using it like we do, would be an approximate range of this system. Are you pedaling?
I'm pedaling.
I can tell when you're not pedaling.
I'm pedaling.
I don't think you're pedaling. Like we promised, we're going to show you the ugly part of a tandem bicycle, and that is getting it on your roof rack so you can take it somewhere to ride it. To do it, we need 2 basic tools, well, really just one, an adjustable wrench just to take the front wheel off because it doesn't have a quick change axle on it yet. I've got one ordered just waiting on it to come in. The other critical part that you need is made by Night Eyes, and it's called a gear tie. I believe this is a 54-inch gear tie, and this is what I'm going to use to lock the handlebars to the frame to keep them from turning. The last time we used a ratchet strap, and the thing about the ratchet strap was it slid around the down tube for the seat back here and still allowed it to turn a little bit. So this locks it to the seat better, and hopefully we'll keep things lined up. So we'll cut out the boring parts, but we'll just give you a quick rundown here of what it takes to get this onto that. If you have not discovered the Night Eyes gear ties yet, they are just life changing. We use them a lot for a lot of different things. Use them a lot on our sailboat to secure things on it. Just really like them. They last a long time. I've been using them now for probably 10 years, and they come in all different lengths and colors. I'm pretty generic. I use black, and I think I got all the lengths. So that right there is simple, but it keeps these forks in line with the frame so it doesn't collapse on us when we go to get it up there and start to spin it back. So now what you need to do is disconnect your front brake. So now I've got the front brake disconnected. What we're going to do is pop it off the kickstand, which that was something I didn't mention, but that is something we also added. The original kickstand was on the back behind Cindy's seat, and the bike was just weighted funny on a single stand like it was, and it always wanted to fall over. So I got the center stand back here like the old mopeds used to have, and that way it's very solid on level ground that just rises up, gets the rear wheel off the ground, works really well. And I'll put a link to it in the description as well. So we'll kick it back so you've got the bike now.
Okay.
I'll take the wrench. And now what I'm gonna do is remove the front wheel and just set it to the side. It goes in the truck while we're carrying it on the rack, and then we'll get the front forks up on the rack. Okay. So now I've got the front wheel removed. It's loose. So what I can do is, I got to remember I have to take this out until I modify that front basket. I knew that there was something I was forgetting. So I'll set that for there. Okay. So you ready?
Okay, what are we doing?
You don't remember?
No, I don't remember.
Gotta love the honesty. So what we're gonna do is remove the front wheel. I'm gonna raise the front of the bike up in the air. We're gonna roll it back, and we have a milk crate sitting there. It's usually one of my painting stands. Um, Cindy will raise the rear wheel up and set the rear wheel on that just to get the angle a little better so we don't hit the back of the truck cap. And then I will put the front forks, put the axle on the carrier through the front forks. And at that point, we'll regroup and move the bike around and get it up on the carrier. You got it? Come closer to the truck, please. Right there. Luckily, we did not film the first attempt at this because it did not go so well. But
it would have been a great blooper.
It would have been a great something. Okay. So now I got the axle for the mount in. It's locked. So let me move the tire out of the way so when we spin, we don't get caught on it. Put our nuts back on here just so we don't lose those. Nothing worse than losing your nuts. So we've learned from previous attempts. We set the two-step ladder here for Cindy so that she can come around and help steady it while I lift it up on there. So let me take the bike now. And you can see how it's pivoting around on that axle mount on top of the rack. You ready? And there we go. It'll stay, you let go of it, it'll sit there by itself now in the tray. Let me back off and we'll get the camera and get a little better view here. The bike is on the rack now. We're both still standing. No one got hurt. No blood is flowing, so it worked really well. What did it take? Like 2 minutes, to pop it off. So it is very doable. So at this point, what we need to do is lock the bike down. And it comes with this little Velcro strap with this little funny bent piece of steel rod. And it took me a second to figure out what this does, but what it actually is meant for is it goes through the, I'm going to do it through from the other side here. Makes it a little easier. These little ears hook your spokes like this, and then bring your Velcro strap down tight. And this is the rear wheel attachment, and it surprisingly works really well. Once you get that on there, it won't come out of that track. And then this other Velcro strap here is to lock one of your cranks down to this, just to keep things from moving around. And what I added to our roof rack were these 4 eyes, so that we can also strap the bike down to the rack. So the bike will go nowhere once we get our straps attached. Like I said, we've taken it on the road already just to test it out. Works great. And then to get it off, it's just a reverse of the process. Undo your Velcro straps, get your ladder set so that Cindy can help, lift the rear wheel up, spin it around, set the rear wheel back on your crate, just take it apart like you were just reverse the process of putting it up here. Works really well. I've been very happy with the whole setup. It's just fun, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I mean, I know it was another chore for you to get ready, and unfortunately, we didn't get to go to Beaver Island. That'll be on our list to do next year. And the whole reason why we wanted to take bikes is because we were too tight to pay the fare for taking the car on the ferry. And we thought, well, we'll just ride bikes and save. I don't remember what it was, but it was pricey, I thought. So,
But now looking at the math, it'd been far cheaper to pay the ferry ride than to spend the money for all the parts to turn this into an e-bike, not to mention
maybe.
my time and effort, and then the roof rack.
Yeah, but you don't look at that. You look at the enjoyment that we're going to have from having this tandem. That's what you got to look at.
I am just bubbling with enjoyment.
And I know you are. I know you are. So it'll be worth it.
It's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed riding with Cindy. Like I said, we rode at Columbus on the bike trail, and we stopped and had a beer on the way back and snacks. And people were looking at us like we were crazy. We were going through the parking lot, and it's just fun. It's a hassle, to be honest. To put that thing up there and take it apart and do it. I mean, it's not like just picking your bike up and going.
Right.
But
right.
in the end, it's just fun and it's neat.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we could be sitting on the couch, or we could be doing something like this. So.
There you go. So if you've ever gave thought of getting an e-bike, I would highly encourage you to give it some thought, try one out. Neither one of us had ever ridden an e-bike, so we had no idea, what to expect. But it's turned out to be a lot of fun, and look forward to a lot of good rides and adventures with Cindy on this.
One concern that we kind of had, I read in the vintage trailer magazine about there have been thefts of e-bikes in campgrounds. So we'll figure out how we're going to keep her secure in the campground.
We do have a lock for it, and we'll have to deal with that. I guarantee if we put it on the roof, no one's probably going to be swiping it off the roof without
that's a good point.
without the tools. So we'll work that out when we get there. But
that's true.
But thanks again for watching, and we'll catch you on the next video.
Thank you.